Everyone desires success, or so they say. The truth is, many people just desire the appearance of success. Which one are you? Stick with me through this video and you'll be sure to know by the end. All right, straight to the point. How comfortable are you with discomfort? That is the single greatest identifying feature in a successful person. You have to be able to embrace discomfort. This is something I have learned over the years working with plant medicine, and it is something that I observe in nature, and you can too. There's a particular environment in the natural world that clearly illustrates the power of discomfort. This is called a riparian zone. These are the areas between two distinct environments where new forms of life evolve, where the discomfort leads to greater biodiversity. My favorite example of this is the lignum vitae tree. Now, most people are not familiar with this tree. It only grows in a select environment in the arid south coast of Jamaica and some other tropical islands and on the coast of Western, I believe, and also Eastern Africa. But either way, I know that it is a very limited and specific environment where the sea meets an arid seashore. Now, most of us imagine tropical beaches as lush green vegetation, and often that is the case. And yet, sometimes you find that where the ocean meets the shore, it is more like desert than forest. And that's where I lived and worked for several years in Jamaica and explored this particular tree with a deep love because I saw the resilience, the hardiness in this particular species, and I understood the example that it showed, that if we too can embrace discomfort, if we can dig down deep into the soil, we can find the resources that we need, where we can not only be shaped by our environment, but we can help shape our environment. Now, this tree, if you look it up online, is incredibly beautiful. They are a very slow growing tree. They have the densest wood of any tree. The wood actually sinks. What makes this tree even more unique is its taproot. I remember when I harvested some of these small trees for transplanting there on my property, just a seedling that was no more than 3 inches above the surface of the soil would have a taproot that was 7 to 10 inches sometimes. So you can imagine what a full-grown tree, some 20 or so feet high, how deep those roots would go. Not only that, but because they're such a slow-growing tree, they are shaped by their environment, as we all are. And if you are in an environment of discomfort, and I don't mean senseless discomfort, I don't mean putting yourself in a situation where you're living on the streets. I mean discomfort as in you're pushing yourself to grow, to become stronger, to see what you're really made of. And in that environment, you do grow stronger, which is why these trees have such a dense wood. As the breeze blows from south to north, you would see trees that over time would develop a growth pattern that replicated or illustrated the wind current. I found this enormously beautiful, and it just struck my imagination how the tree itself was shaped by its environment, and at the same time, when I stood back and looked at a field full of these trees, how beautifully they also shaped their environment. In an area that would have had almost no plant growth, they provided shelter for birds and other animals. They provided a cool spot of shade for someone to rest. There was even an old big lignum vitae tree that was well over 300 years old that was the school for the area in the 1800s. Now, there are so many places in nature where we can see how discomfort moving into difficulty can actually create opportunity for new life and new growth. Another beautiful, interesting, and often overlooked example is that of the lichen. Now, lichens are a symbiosis of algae and fungi, and they grow in some of the most adverse environments. Actually, on the rim of volcanoes, you can find algae growing when nothing else will. And this is called a vanguard species. These species create opportunities for life to grow where opportunity did not originally exist. And if you step into your discomfort, if you embrace the effort that it's going to take to achieve the dreams and desires that are in your heart and mind, then you too will create opportunity for growth of others. When I look back at the environment that I left behind in Jamaica, there were no sacred mushroom retreats when I started that one in 2013. When I bootstrapped that organization, there were none like it on the planet. And now in Jamaica alone, there are over 15 separate psilocybin retreat centers. It is now a $26 million industry on the island. That work, that effort arose from my discomfort. I had a deep desire to help more people access the beauty, the healing, the power of psilocybin mushrooms. I was arrested for this love. I was in jail. I faced 3B felonies. I could have given up any number of times. But by facing that discomfort, I provided not only an opportunity for thousands of people to experience psilocybin mushrooms who otherwise wouldn't have, but provided an environment that would nurture an entire industry. And that's the same thing that I'm doing now with Sanctuary. If you're not familiar with that effort, sanctuary.org, P-S-A-N-C-T-U-A-R-Y, then you're invited to check that out because it is a very unique project that is providing a space, albeit uncomfortable for me at times, where others can grow and thrive and find their true selves without having to travel thousands of miles or spend thousands of dollars. Now, psilocybin itself is a great example of stepping into discomfort. One of the greatest, I think, pieces of misinformation that's shared right now around psychedelics is that they will almost instantly transform your life. There is some talk about challenging trips or there's fear around the bad trip. But moreover, in media, you see headlines like psilocybin, one dose of psilocybin cures depression or heals PTSD or overcomes addiction. My friends, this is just generally not the truth. There are those cases, but even still, those cases, what you do not see is that a year later, the individual often finds himself right back in a very similar state as before. And this is for a couple of reasons. First being, after the medicine work, folks are not inclined to put themselves in uncomfortable situations. We have this tendency to believe that convenience is what can heal us. Take Tylenol, take a pharmaceutical, take some mushrooms and you'll feel better. But actually, convenience may be what is killing us. And despite the media messaging, psilocybin does not work that way. You will absolutely face discomfort. And if you're going to grow, that is going to be essential. Recently, I've worked with an individual who has truly exhibited this. Now, there's been many, many over the years, but this person is fresh on my mind. This is someone who has dealt with a significant amount of physical discomfort. And when going to a allopathic or standard doctor, the individual is prescribed pharmaceuticals, given some typical easy way out to numb the pain, to overlook the symptoms. But he knows that if he does that, then he's actually going to further embed the illness. So what this brave person has done is move toward the pain. He's used sacred mushrooms and other medicines to move towards the discomfort in order to understand its origin, and so that he can transmute it, so that he can pass through it and get to the other side, finally embodying his healed self, being who he was meant to be. Now, once he does that, more discomfort will come. The journey never ends, folks, and that can feel disheartening at times. Yes, we hike up the hill, catch our breath, and keep on going. That is what life is all about. And that's not a problem. That's not something that we have to solve. That is actually the journey that we're on. I want to see you achieve your highest dreams and ambitions. I want to achieve mine as well. That's one of the reasons that I started creating content in this manner. This is incredibly uncomfortable for me, but I know that I want to grow. I know that I want to be the next highest level version of myself, and hiding behind interviews, as much as I enjoy conversations with folks, I had reached a ceiling, and it's time to push forward. Now, another interesting irony or paradox of this growth through discomfort is that sometimes it doesn't just mean doing things that we're uncomfortable with. It means stop doing things that we are so comfortable with. I can recall a few months ago when I finally broke my habitual use of cannabis. I had grown so comfortable with that crutch. It was my nightly routine, if not throughout the day at some times. Anytime a little resistance would come up, anytime I felt like I needed to give myself a break or a pause, rather than allowing that opportunity to expand my capacity, I would avoid it. Now, I'm not saying this to criticize cannabis. Everything in life can be used as a crutch, as an escape. Only you can determine the patterns and behaviors that you're engaging in and whether or not they are an avoidance of discomfort or an attempt to be in comfort, to be comforted. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be comfortable at times. Take a rest, treat yourself good, and then go right back at it. Because if you sit for too long, well, you'll become stagnant. And I know that's not what you want. I also see this in parenting. I'm a parent of 4 children. My oldest is 23 years old. It's incredible to realize. My youngest, a daughter of 5, is where I'm finding an even or a renewed opportunity to explore my boundaries in comfort. And I mean this by speaking to the fact that sometimes, if not often, we have to hold our children accountable, or we have to hold ourselves accountable, acknowledge where we have perhaps not lived up to our own standards. Ironically, in having a daughter, this becomes apparent to me because, well, I want to pamper her. I want her to have the easiest life possible. And at the same time, I know that if I do that, that she will not grow to be the strongest, most resilient woman that she can be. We have a responsibility to our children, to our spouses, to our friends and communities, and most of all, to ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to challenge each other in a loving way. Discomfort doesn't mean a lack of caring. Now, again, all the conversations, all the subjects that we discuss in the channel, there's nuance to be considered. Yes, a fetish for discomfort can become abuse. That is not what we're talking about here. Only you can know this for yourself. Only you can evaluate what is right for you. However, most of us, under our own evaluation, well, we don't push ourselves enough. We stay comfortable. We stay where it's easy. And we miss the opportunity to become who we're meant to be. I have learned to specialize in stepping into discomfort for myself and in those I support. There are still areas where I have lots of room for growth, and I always will. This is one of the reasons why I love my work so much. because it puts me in very uncomfortable positions often. I just spent the weekend facilitating a 14-person retreat with 7 space holders, 20 people that I was managing, and there were many moments of discomfort, many moments where I cringed at my own words, where I had to say things to someone that I didn't really want to say but needed to be said. This is what I want to encourage in you. Find the places where you know you have resistance, where you know you need or want to say or do the thing, and yet you don't. In the next video, we're going to talk about some relatively easy ways to begin moving into discomfort. We're going to talk about the spiritual lessons behind discomfort. We're going to talk about what this means for your soul, not just for your success. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you on the next video. Be sure to like, subscribe. Most valuable, share this video with a friend if you found it useful.